Have you ever stood in front of a woman and felt like there was something she wasn't saying, something behind the smiles, the clever words, the polished presence? Something you couldn't name, but you felt it. It's not lust, it's not love, and it's definitely not something you'll find in romantic comedies or dating advice forums. It's a hidden longing, a deep, almost ancient desire most women carry silently. Not because they're ashamed of it, but because the world taught them to bury it. This is a fantasy she'll never post about online, never joke about with her friends, and maybe not even admit to herself. It's not about money. It's not about looks. And it has nothing to do with dominance. It's about something far rarer. Something most men have forgotten how to embody. Stillness, certainty, a grounded presence. A kind of masculine energy that doesn't chase, doesn't flinch, and doesn't perform for approval. In today's video, we're going to uncover this unspoken truth, a truth rooted in Stoic philosophy, modern psychology, and raw human experience. We'll explore what this fantasy really is, why it matters, and how to awaken it in a woman, not through words, but through how you exist. Stay until the end, because this isn't just about attraction. It's about becoming the kind of man who brings calm to chaos and creates the one thing every strong woman secretly craves. The safety to finally exhale. Let's begin. There's a part of her you'll likely never see, unless you know how to look for it. It's not on her Instagram, it's not in the things she says. It's in the pause before she speaks. In the way she scans a room, not for flash, but for foundation. Because beneath her independence, her sharp wit, and her carefully curated exterior, there's a hidden craving. Not for control, not for domination, but for relief. A kind of relief that doesn't come from spa days or vacations, but from presence. The kind that lets her stop being the one who has to lead, plan, fix, and carry. This fantasy isn't sexual, though it has deep emotional sensuality to it. It's not about submission in the cliché sense, it's about surrender. Emotional surrender. The kind she can only offer when she feels fully, unshakably safe. And this is where most men get it wrong. They think strength is about taking charge. That if they're louder, more assertive, more alpha, they'll unlock her desire. But she's not looking for a man who takes control of her. She's looking for a man who has control of himself. That's the difference between the loud and the grounded. The loud man commands attention. The grounded man doesn't need to, and that's why she can't look away. Because this quiet fantasy is not about being told what to do. It's about not having to decide everything all the time. In a world that constantly pushes women into leadership roles emotionally, professionally, relationally, what she secretly wants is to not be in charge for once. Not because she can't handle it, but because she's exhausted from always having to. She won't say it, maybe she doesn't even fully know it. But when she meets a man whose energy says, "You don't need to hold everything right now because I've got it," something in her shifts. This isn't about being her savior. It's about being still enough in yourself that she can finally let her guard down. She didn't start out this way. She wasn't born guarded, calculated, or constantly in control. But over time, through subtle lessons, painful moments, and quiet betrayals, she learned that being soft was dangerous. That wanting too much made her needy. That showing emotion made her too sensitive. That depending on anyone was a liability. So, like many women in today's world, she put on armor. Emotional armor, intellectual armor, even sexual armor. Not to manipulate, but to survive. She became the planner, the fixer, the achiever. She learned to anticipate disappointment before it arrived. And she got good, very good at being in charge of her own safety. This armor has served her, but it's also isolated her. Because now even when she wants to let go, she doesn't know how. Even when she craves surrender, she doesn't know whom to trust. Even when she meets a good man, she's scanning him for signs of weakness. Not because she's cold, but because she's been trained to look for the fall before it happens. She spent years learning to lead, but almost no time learning how to rest in someone else's presence. That's why her deepest fantasy stays buried. Because in a world that tells her to never need anyone, needing a man in any way feels like betrayal, not of you, but of the identity she's had to build to survive. And so she performs. She jokes, flirts, dominates conversations, and reads every room like a chessboard. Not to show off, but because she's been disappointed too many times to play freely. And beneath it all is one aching question. Is there anyone strong enough to meet me where I don't have to lead? This is why you'll often hear women say, "I intimidate men," or "men don't know what to do with me." It's not about arrogance. It's about exhaustion. They've built so many layers to protect their vulnerability that by the time they want to open up, most men are already reacting to the surface performance, not the soul underneath. The few men who don't flinch, who don't try to fix, solve, or tame her, those are the ones she notices. Because that kind of presence says, you don't have to be strong here, I see beyond the act. Clinical psychology calls this adaptive overfunctioning, where someone steps up in every situation to control outcomes because they don't trust the world to catch them if they fall. That's her armor. And the deeper fantasy is to finally take it off, but only when someone proves they can hold what she's been holding alone. There's a moment. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it changes everything. It's the moment she realizes, I don't have to lead here, and it never comes from a man trying to impress her. It never arrives with compliments or flashy displays. It's triggered by something much rarer, stillness. A kind of masculine stillness that doesn't posture, doesn't push, and doesn't perform. It's in the way he walks into a room without demanding attention, but everyone notices anyway. It's in the way he listens, not just with ears, but with presence. The kind of listening that says, I'm not trying to win you, I'm simply here, unshaken. This is the energy she can't explain but can't ignore. Because it's not about what he says, it's about how he is. Most men chase. They fill silences with words, rush to prove themselves, lean forward with need. But the man she remembers is the one who doesn't need anything from her. He's not indifferent, he's just anchored. He knows who he is, and that clarity creates space for her to finally soften. There's a scene in many women's memories. A man who didn't flinch when she challenged him, who didn't rush when she hesitated, who didn't fill the room with noise to cover his insecurity. Instead, he paused, and in that pause she felt something she hadn't in years. Safety without control, not dominance, not manipulation, just a steady presence that allowed her to breathe. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Women intuitively know this. They are drawn to the man who has already wrestled with life, not because he brags about it, but because he radiates quiet confidence from having survived and integrated it. His stillness isn't passive, it's earned. That's why she leans in, not because he demands it, but because he never needed to. Think of the man who walks into a social setting and speaks little, but when he does, everyone listens. He's not loud, he's not chasing laughs or approval, but his very presence shifts the energy of the room. She feels that. And something deep in her responds with, maybe I can let go here. That's the beginning of surrender. And surrender, when it's given freely, not forced, is the most intimate gift she has. She was the kind of woman who turned heads, sharp, elegant, confident, the kind that walks into a room like she owns it. She always knew how to take control of conversations, of decisions, of men. Most tried to impress her. Some tried to overpower her. None lasted long. Until one evening at a quiet rooftop bar, everything shifted. He was already there when she arrived, not on his phone, not looking around, just still taking in the skyline with a calm that didn't need an audience. She noticed the difference immediately. Not just how he looked, but how present he was. When they spoke, he didn't try to dominate the conversation. He asked her one question and then actually waited for her answer. No interruptions, no playful one-upmanship, no flirty distractions. Just silence, space, clarity. And when she paused mid-sentence, unsure how vulnerable to get, he didn't rush to comfort her or pivot to a joke. He just stayed, held the silence like a sacred space. Then he said quietly, "You talk like you're used to being misunderstood." That sentence hit her harder than any compliment ever could, because it wasn't flattery, it was witnessing. For a split second she didn't perform, she didn't pose, she didn't hide behind intellect or irony. She just was. That's the moment many women crave, but rarely find. When a man doesn't try to fix or flatter her or figure her out, he simply holds the space where her guard can fall naturally. And when it does, it feels like exhaling after years of holding her breath. She didn't fall for him because he said the right things. She remembered him because of how she felt in his presence. Seen, unrushed, safe to be real. This story isn't unique because of what was said, but because of what was felt between the words. And that's what most men overlook. Attraction isn't built through volume or action. It's built in the quality of your stillness. A man who doesn't chase attention often becomes the one she wants attention from the most, because he offers something rare, the freedom to stop performing, the rare invitation to rest. Think about this. When was the last time you sat with someone and allowed the silence to stretch? When you didn't rush to impress, didn't reach for control, but let the moment unfold. That's where the magic lives, in restraint, in clarity, in grounded presence. She doesn't need saving, she doesn't need fixing, she doesn't need someone to take over her life. What she needs, what she rarely dares to admit, is rest. Emotional rest. Mental rest. The kind of rest that comes not from sleep, but from not having to be in charge for once. You see, the modern woman is praised for being independent, productive, unstoppable. She runs companies. She holds families together. She juggles expectations, friendships, reputations. And behind all of that, she's tired. Tired of always being the planner. Tired of holding space for everyone else's needs. Tired of being strong even when she wants to fall apart. She's built to lead, yes, but she's also built to feel, to flow, to surrender when it's safe. But the world rarely makes it safe. So she stays in go mode, hyper-aware, hyper-capable, hyper-responsible. That's where you come in. Not as her rescuer, but as her anchor. A man who's so solid in himself that she can finally stop gripping the wheel. Studies in neuropsychology show that cortisol, our stress hormone, spikes in women who feel like they have to always stay ahead in both social and emotional environments. But when a woman feels emotionally held, when she senses that she's with someone steady, safe, and non-reactive, her cortisol drops. Her nervous system regulates. Her body softens. Her voice lowers. She breathes deeper. She literally relaxes into her feminine state. That's not weakness, that's alignment. You might think being a protector means fighting threats or paying bills, but more often than not, what she needs protected is her own nervous system. She wants someone who doesn't bring chaos but calms it. Someone whose presence slows the world down. Who doesn't need to be loud to be heard or aggressive to be respected. Because when your energy says, "I've got this," without ever needing to prove it, she exhales. Not because you made her submit, but because she no longer has to manage everything alone. Epictetus wrote, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." For her, that freedom begins when she can finally stop controlling every interaction, every outcome, every part of her persona. And she only surrenders control to the man who has mastered his own. Let's be honest. Presence sounds powerful, but what does it really mean? How do you become the kind of man whose silence is more compelling than his charm? The calmness of the man who commands attention without effort. The steadiness of the man who allows her to finally let go. The truth is, presence isn't a natural talent. It's built, and it's built from the inside out. Presence starts with mental discipline. If your mind is in chaos, full of self-doubt, overthinking, and performance anxiety, she'll sense it, even if you never say a word. A calm man doesn't just stand still. He thinks clearly. He breathes deeply. He doesn't rehearse a response. He's experiencing the moment. Do you want to be that man? Start with daily silence. No surfing, no stimulation, just silence. Whether it's meditation, journaling, or 10 minutes of Stoic reflection, train your nervous system to self-soothe so you never have to soothe your nervous system with empty words. Presence is not passivity. It's intentional restraint. Most men react to her moods, to her silence, to her tests. But when you react, you give her the framework. Instead, practice responding slowly, clearly, without defensiveness. Don't rush to fix. Don't chase closure. Don't fill awkward moments with noise. Your value is not in what you do. It's in what you stand for without wavering. You don't have to say much, but what you say matters. Women don't remember most compliments, but they will remember a sentence that saw through their mask. To develop that, stop talking to impress. Start speaking from observation, from depth, from silence. The less you say, the more impact your words have. Presence is expressed through body language. The way you walk, your posture, your gestures. Are you fidgeting, rolling your eyes, talking with your hands too much? Or are you calm, focused, moving slowly like a man in no hurry to prove anything? Here's the key: act like someone who has chosen herself. And when you do, she will sense it before you even say anything. In Stoicism, true power comes not from controlling others, but from mastering yourself. The Stoic does not seek approval. He does not need to chase. He builds such an inner strength that life adapts to him. This energy, when refined, becomes almost spiritual in its gravity, and women are biologically and emotionally tuned to detect it. When you reach that level, you no longer need to conquer her. You just need to be. What is this presence we're talking about? This is not a tactic. This is not manipulation. This isn't about making her fall in love with you. It's about you. Because when you learn to lead, you'll become the kind of man she can follow without fear. Let's address the elephant in the room. Most men, good men, get women completely wrong. Not because they're foolish, not because they're weak, but because they've been misinformed. By movies, by dating coaches, by loud social media advice with no soul. They're told, be alpha, take control, dominate, use lines, use status, use tactics. But here's the truth. What draws a woman in deeply has almost nothing to do with performance. Most men assume they need to prove themselves. So they overcompensate, showing off achievements, status, physical strength, money, even kindness like it's a resume. But here's what women feel when you do that. He's trying to earn me because he doesn't believe he's already enough. It's not the gesture that fails, it's the neediness beneath it. Because true attraction isn't about proving value, it's about expressing wholeness. Many men go the opposite direction. They become overly polite, overly gentle, overly cautious. They say all the right things. They never disagree. They walk on eggshells thinking it makes her feel respected. But it doesn't make her feel safe. It makes her feel like she has to lead. And when she's leading emotionally, she can't relax into intimacy. Being kind is not the same as being solid. And most nice guys lack edge, not because they're good, but because they're scared of their own truth. Excitement fades, but groundedness lingers. She doesn't need constant stimulation. What she craves, especially if she's strong in the world, is a man whose energy calms her nervous system, not overstimulates it. Don't confuse fun with depth. What's unforgettable to her isn't adrenaline, it's anchoring. Women have a far more sensitive, intuitive radar than most men realize. They pick up on emotional frequency, not just surface traits. When your energy says, "I don't need you to complete me. I've already made peace with myself," she feels it. And when your energy says, "I'm secretly hoping you'll validate me," she feels that too. No, she's not looking for a man to take control of her. She's looking for a man in control of himself. Not someone perfect, not someone wealthy, not someone who tries to mold himself to her preferences, but someone who radiates certainty, not arrogance, direction, not aggression, emotional clarity, not emotional chaos. Here's the paradox that confuses most men. The less you chase her, the more she feels safe enough to come closer. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because your stillness tells her what your mouth never has to say. I already belong to myself, and that's why I'll never lose myself in you. And that's what awakens her deepest fantasy. So now you know that the #1 female fantasy no one talks about has nothing to do with being controlled and everything to do with feeling safe enough to surrender. Not because she's weak, but because she's exhausted from being strong all the time. Not because she needs saving, but because she longs for space where she doesn't have to perform. And the man who awakens that longing isn't the loudest, richest, or most charming in the room. He's the most present. He doesn't try to take her over. He simply doesn't collapse when she shows her full weight. He doesn't flinch when she gets emotional. He doesn't analyze her. He doesn't fix her. He just holds the space. And when he does, something in her shifts slowly, quietly, and powerfully. She doesn't choose to trust him with her logic. Her body does. Her nervous system does. Her instincts do. And that's the kind of attraction that isn't based on tactics, but on truth. The Stoics taught us that freedom is found in mastering ourselves. That the calmest man in the room is always the strongest. That true power doesn't need to announce itself. It is felt. And that when you stop performing, when you start showing up as you truly are, you don't just change how women respond to you. You change how you respond to life. Be the man who doesn't chase approval. Be the man who doesn't flinch under pressure. Be the man who leads without noise, who listens without needing to fix, and who anchors the space with unwavering stillness. Because when you do, you give her and the world something rare. A moment where everything stops. A moment where masks drop. A moment where presence becomes memory. And in that moment, you won't just become more attractive. You'll become unforgettable.